So building financial security, a little bit about myself. I did lose my corporate job after 7 years, 8 days ago. So it's pretty raw, pretty crazy. Mike Tyson has a great quote that says, everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face. And so I would say that myself and many of you may have been experiencing, you had that safe, comfortable job, you were in higher education, or you were in a comfortable corporate job, or whatever your situation is, you found out that you were let go without any real warning, and really something that was out of your control. And so for me, it's really been a moment to reflect these last few days. And so I actually recently posted another video, a YouTube video of what I've done the last 8 days to kind of connect with people and reach out. And this is what I'm really glad that this conference is available, because it's a great platform and a great opportunity for people to get to know each other, to reach out and kind of create a community where you're not alone. And for me, like I said before, when Eric reached out to me and asked me if I'd like to present financial information to this audience, I'm kind of out of place. I'm not an educator, but I knew that I have a lot of value to add because of teaching financial insights and how to build financial security. And so for myself, when I found out that I lost my job, I had a lot of emotions going through my body. But one thing that really didn't get worried about was my finances, because I have a solid foundation. And today I'm going to walk through some of the things that I've done, but it's not about me. It's about what you can do in finding and building financial security. And so I built financial security and teach these principles, never needing and hoping to use them. But the reality is I'm so grateful that I have it in place. And regardless of what your situation is, my hope for you as we talk for the next 30 minutes or so is that you take some actions away. I'm going to be going over some things that are a little bit controversial, and maybe some different things that you haven't heard it worded a particular way. So be sure that you're going to have notes, pen and paper, because I am going to go through concepts of things that are going to be different and maybe new than maybe you hear in your mainstream media or other outlets. But I can promise you, if you follow the things that I share, you're gonna be set up for success, because I want this to be more than just informational. I want this to be something that you can reference later and take action on, because you can only learn so much. It's about what you do with the information that's really going to be powerful for your situation. And so this is what I do. I've shared a lot of educational content through YouTube and other means over the last year. Again, with the new understanding that I have more time available to help people and really connect with people. I've taken on clients in the past on one-on-one to get a little bit more details into some of the things that I'll share today. So I do have clients that I work with, but I'll be talking more about high levels. This is information that you can take today. So let's take a peek at the presentation. So again, yesterday, I did post this video on YouTube. I'm going to leave a link to this video that you can check out later if you're interested, about my experience about losing my corporate job, and how there's a couple of tips and tricks that I use that maybe you can apply in your life, or if you know someone who's been recently displaced, that they can use. So you're welcome to check out that link as well. So savings. If you notice, my brand or my name is The Savings Secret. So if you look at this chart here, I'm not sure how easy it is to see on your screen, but really it's that Americans, even if you're not in the United States, savings isn't something that people have a lot of. And unfortunately, there's a lot of different factors that draw into this, but really driving in a savings account and having money in your savings account can be very difficult. 45% of Americans don't have anything. And if you look at the date when this was taken, this was even before COVID. And so I'm sure it's in a very difficult place. So basically, if you look at this, about a little less than 70% of Americans don't even have $1,000 saved. And so hopefully as we talk today, I'm going to give you some real practical things that you can do to help build up your savings. And if you have savings, I'm still going to share some things to help you be more intentional with your money, because that's the goal. Is you want to have a plan. You want to make sure that you know where your money's going. So again, not a lot of people have savings, and so I'm going to talk through what you can do to help build it. But why is it so challenging to build up savings? Well, there's so many things that happen in life that are unexpected. You get laid off from a job, you have high medical expenses, you have medical debt, you have student loan debt. There's so many challenges that come up, and some are unexpected and some are expected, and some that we plan for ourselves, whether they're vacation or presents or planning for fun events. There's just a lot of things that come up. But one thing I would say is a credit card is not an emergency fund. To be honest with you, a credit card used as an emergency fund can do far greater harm than not having the money available. There's other ways of how to navigate it. And so getting into debt and further debt can be very challenging. And I know there's people who've been laid off that maybe is worried about the income and how to take care of that. But just the goal is to be focused on how can you prepare to build up an emergency fund. And there's a lot of expenses. And I'm sure you all have different experiences that you're going through that are unexpected. Feel free to put them in the chat box. I'd love to see some of the biggest unexpected expenses that you've had in your life. I know for me, I had a son who was born at the end of a year, and because he was born 8 weeks early, I had to send him to a NICU, and he was in the NICU, and then he got released from the hospital, and then he had complications after that in the following year. And so what I reached was what's called a double max out of pocket. So I've had experiences where I had $20,000 worth of medical expenses that hit me within a 6-week period of time. And so there's going to be challenges that have come through. And so I'm happy to report that, no longer do I have to worry about those medical expenses, and no longer do I have to worry about those things, because I created a plan, executed the plan, and now I have more security because I'm not worried about my day-to-day. But we're going to talk through about how to get there. So a great quote that I tell a lot of my clients, and I've been telling a lot of people on my social media platforms, is I teach people not to just save first, but to save everything. And this is not scammy. This is not meant to deceive. This is 100% of what I believe. And I'm going to talk through how you can actually save 100% of your income. And then once you're saving your income, how then you can be intentional with how you spend your savings. So keep this in mind of building and saving money, all right? So there's really 3 things that you're going to need to do if you want to set up your personal finances. And so this is definitely, if you haven't taken any notes, this is one that you're going to want to start taking notes on. Is really, I break it down to 3 specific areas. And the first area is very simple, is understanding, do you have the right bank account? And not all bank accounts are treated the same. Now, a lot of times people have the bank account that they had when they graduated high school, maybe the one that they graduated college with, or they don't really know why they picked the bank. Maybe they just thought it was a name or it was convenient to buy. But not all banks are treated the same. And so one of the recommendations that I would have you do, one of these actions, is to really evaluate, is the bank you have giving you the service you need? And a couple of requirements that I would give for banks is to say, make sure that there is no fees of any kind, because you can get banking without any fees. There are so many different options and so many things that I recommend to people about different banks that they have, but you want to make sure that there's a bank with no fees. The second thing you're going to want to make sure is you're going to want to make sure that it has a high yield savings account. Now, in this world where there's so many different options with banks, and there's not a lot of a lot of interest rates because the federal government has taken that down. And I'm sure a lot of people who are watching this who may be a lot more familiar with the federal rate and how that affects what you can get on your interest rate. But there are different banks that offer different interest rates on their savings account. And something that you really want to look for is a high yield savings account. A couple of banks that I've used and I would recommend is Ally Bank. And another bank would be Simple. And the last bank that I've used most recently that's been very fascinating is Chime. And all three of these banks are online banks, but they also give you an amazing app experience and there's no fees of any kind. And yes, all of these banks are FDIC insured, just like your brick and mortar banks. And they give you a better customer experiences because you maybe not be depositing cash or going to a bank regularly. They're going to be able to give you a better experience with service. So those are just a few things to keep in mind when looking at a bank. And so what I recommend is making sure that you find a bank that meets your needs. Again, doesn't have any expenses, doesn't have any fees. You can get your money out for free. I've done a whole nother video on different banks that I recommend. I actually put it in the chat box. You're welcome to take a peek at that as well. And then the second part of bullet that you might see there is budget. And you need to have a budget. And a budget may be the B word or it may be a bad term to a lot of different people. But really, a budget is just having a plan. You need to have a plan for your money. And what I teach people is not to budget off of your income. A lot of times you're going to hear things referred to as a zero-based budget. What I teach people is to budget off of your expenses. So you need to know exactly what your expenses are. And so by putting your money and figuring out, going through line by line and saying, how much money is my rent? How much money do I plan on spending for food? You need to know these expenses before the month starts. You need to have a game plan. And so this is what I help clients with. This is something that I teach a lot, is to have a budget. But when you walk through, what I'll share with you is I teach people that you don't necessarily have to budget how much money you save in your savings account. I teach that that happens automatically because you're direct depositing your money into your savings account. And so that's the key, is you're putting your money in your savings account, you're budgeting your expenses, understanding what are your monthly expenses before the month starts, making sure you have that money in your checking account and you're spending that wisely. So that is the budget. And the last part is setting up savings as a default. Like I said before, one of the reasons why budgets are complicated and confusing is nobody can give you an answer of what it means and how much money you need to save. Because like I told you, life happens. There's so many different situations that can happen, and nobody could possibly know everything that's going to happen in your life to plan for perfectly. So what I teach people is, again, don't save first, save everything. Setting up saving as a default is extremely important. So the next thing is to focus on the budget. And this is 68% of Americans don't have a formal budget. And again, I know this data looks very similar to what I shared before, is that about 69% of Americans don't have $1,000 saved. And so again, I'm not a professor. I'm not an expert in causation analysis or anything like that. But it doesn't take a genius to realize if you're not budgeting your money, it's going to be very difficult to save money, to be able to establish where you're not going to be able to get out of the same rigmarole where you're living paycheck to paycheck. But regardless of where you're at, if you're part of the 1/3 that does budget, or you're part of the 2/3 that doesn't, budgeting doesn't have to be convoluted. And again, one of the things that I work with is there's people, especially if you're married or you're with your partner, there's a lot of different challenges when people navigate their budgets. There's somebody that may be the spender and there's somebody who's more of the saver. And so money, we know, takes up a lot of emotional strain for people and can be the cause for a lot of conflict. But one of the things that I teach people is when you have a plan and you come together as a partner, as a couple, and you make that plan together, there's nothing throughout the month that you guys can't overcome together. So again, budgeting isn't just meant for the one person. It's meant to be unified. It's not just he takes care of the budget or she takes care of the budget. You need to work together, because the person who's the saver is going to make sure that you have future plans, and the person who's the spender is going to make sure that you have an enjoyable life for the current month. So budgeting is a very important process in this whole experience. And again, budgeting does not have to be difficult. And with what I teach people is you don't need to budget how much to save. It happens automatically. So again, if you haven't been taking notes, this is one you're going to want to screenshot. This is going to be the one that you're going to want to take. Maybe you've been a little bit confused of what I'm talking about, but this is a great visual of how I'm walking through what I've shared with you. So how do you set up your savings as a default? So what you need to do is, like I've said, you need to figure out a bank that doesn't offer any fees or charges to have you store your money there. There's a lot of different banks that say you need to have a minimum balance, you need to have direct deposit set up, you need to have this many transactions with your debit card. There's so many games that the banking industry plays that make it very difficult to make sure that you're winning with money. So again, the banks that I referred, again, I put that link over there. You can check it out as far as in the comments about which banks I recommend that don't charge anything. So once you have the right banking setup, then what you do is you can put your money into your savings account. By putting your money first in your savings account, you are making a conscious decision to save everything that you make. You're making that conscious decision, and it's all going into savings. So once your money is into savings, then you need to create a budget. Again, if you don't like the word budget, you're basically just making a plan for your expenses. You want to make sure that you have a plan for your expenses. So you need to figure out before the month starts, you need to figure out what are your expenses for the upcoming month. So you look at your rent, your transportation, you need to figure out your food and all the other things in your lifestyle that you need to have that are bills or things that you want to spend that you have. Now, obviously, when I say a budget, it doesn't mean that you don't have a portion of your money that doesn't have an exact reason. It may be, for what me and my wife do, is it may be just called Cammie's funds or Jamie's funds. And this is budgeted money that really my wife and I can spend on whatever we want. We have a dedicated dollar amount that she can spend or I can spend without having to counsel with one another. We've already determined before the month has even started which money we're going to spend. So creating that budget makes it very simple, and there doesn't come any convolution. So the next part is you put that money that you're budgeting off of your expenses, you physically make a transfer, or technically a digital transfer, from your savings account to your checking account. So for example, if you do your budget and you say, hey, my expenses are, let's say, $4,000, what you're going to do then is you transfer from your savings account $4,000 into your checking account before the month even starts. So by the end of the previous month, you have an entire month's worth of expenses in your checking account. By doing this, you do not care when your bills are due throughout the month, because all of your bills are covered for the entire month before the month starts. Also, when you're determining when you get paid, all of your money is going into your savings account directly. So you're putting your money first into your savings account. Now, yes, some of you maybe watching this, maybe saying, I'm part of that 70% who doesn't have any money in my savings account. How can I make this work? So one of the things I would say is it's a paradigm shift. It's putting your money first in your savings account. By doing that, you are going to make the hard conversations with your budget and your expenses to say truly what is needed and what is not needed. And so by having this conversation with yourself, with your partner, your accountability partner, whatever, you're going to say, you know what? We can't have nothing in savings. Life happens. We had a safe, secure job. I had a safe, secure job. It's not good enough to have nothing in your savings account. So what my hope is to help people build up their savings account so that they have more financial security. So again, this is just one aspect of how to of what I teach clients to help people make budgeting not so convoluted and how to build up savings automatically. So what I just sent over as well in the comment section was a video about how to budget off of your expenses. There are a lot of different budgeting tools out there. I have a whole review about the one that I personally use. I've used it for over 3.5 years. It's the EveryDollar app. You're welcome to check out the link in the description where I walk through step by step how to set up a budget. And that first budget that you set up, if you're not comfortable setting up that first budget, it's going to take a little time to truly understand all of your expenses. But the good news is, for me, I budget, yes, every month. And me and my wife have a conversation about money. But the reality is, our conversation is less than 10 minutes every single month. We have a 10-minute conversation about our finances for the upcoming month, and we are building financial security. So again, it's getting your partner on board. It's helping. It's not, you can't spend this money. It's not telling someone what they can't spend. It's not saying that they spend too much. It's when you budget off of your expenses, you are unified on what you want to spend your money on, and then you're making savings your default. So again, this is one portion. Again, I work with a lot of different clients, and I walk through investing for the future. This is just one piece of the information of the puzzle of how to navigate. So this is kind of the first 3 steps, the actions that I wanted to walk through today of organizing your savings and checking. The second one I would say would be budgeting. The third one would be about, building savings automatically. So again, if you're having a hard time having a conversation about money with your spouse or your partner, if you follow this, you're making the plan before the month starts. And so the person who's the saver that says, we didn't have that budgeted, the reality is you did have it budgeted. And so for me, in my family, I'm obviously the saver. So when I make that budget when we make the budget, I should say, when we make the budget together, when we make that budget, there's things that she says, hey, honey, I would like to add this to this month's budget. I know we didn't account for it in last month, but this is what I would like to be, whether it's homeschooling materials, whether the kids need new clothes. We don't have an artificial budget for clothes every month because we don't buy clothes every month. Now, that might be right for you, but for us, we don't plan for that. But the reality is you do have times where it's like, you know what, this month we do need to buy clothes. So we put together a plan of what we want to spend for clothes for the upcoming month. So again, it's a great way to bring unity in your marriage. It's a great way to bring peace of mind when so many other things happened. Like I said, from personal experience, I was out of control of losing my job. But the reality is when I lost my job, I didn't have that gut-wrenching feeling of, oh my gosh, how am I going to handle all of these different bills and I can't pay these bills tomorrow. You don't have to worry about it if you're automatically saving. So on a personal note, one things that I would say is on a personal note, my wife just checked in. She said spender, and I'm the slender. So I guess I might have had some funny words there as I get distracted from the chat box. But I would just say, kind of lost my train of thought, but the top three things are what is foundational and what most people don't have that $1,000 saved. And of course, I work with clients to get much past $1,000 to get a full month's worth of expenses. And then again, you can then taking care of debt, eliminate that from your life. Building up retirement savings. A lot of times people want to build retirement savings before they've really taken care of debt or have a strong emergency fund, and that can be very dangerous. And then I also talk about building home ownership, not just buying a home, but literally owning it outright. That's extremely important. And even though I recently lost my job, I still am on track potentially to pay off my home by July of next year. And so that's a goal that I worked with my wife, and we've come together to build this goal to help accomplish that. And then, of course, maxing out once your home is paid off and you've taken care of that. And buying a home is not for everybody, but then taking care of maxing out your retirement accounts and non-retirement investing accounts. But these are the steps that I share with people to really understand how to build a solid foundation. So these are the actions that I work with people and encourage you to take a look at. So I know I've given a lot of information. And again, I might have rambled on a few things. Like I said, I appreciate your kindness. As I said, recently lost my job, but the content that I do share really helps a lot of people. And what I would also share is this great quote from Robert Kiyosaki, and it says, if you want to be financially free, you need to become a different person than you are today. Let go of whatever has held you back in the past. There's going to be things where you say, I don't make enough money, or no one's going to want the skills that I have, or I can't make it work. And that feeling of no hope is terrible. But I can promise you that there is hope. And just because of where you've been does not determine where you're going to be in the future. And so again, my whole passion, the reason I created The Saving Secret was because I love to help people. I love to help people discover that they can truly win with money. My goal is to give them ideas and things that they may have not have thought of, or ways that they can cut expenses to give them more money in their life. For the company that I worked for before, they're very passionate about saving money. And one of the things that I shared all the time is that a great quote from Sam Walton said, when you can help people save money, that they can experience a better life. And really, it's just a few principles to help that I hope I can help guide people to get to that next step. So here's my contact information. Again, I share new YouTube videos every week. And again, I have coaching. So if you want to take this conversation a little bit further, I have coaching that you're welcome to sign up for, where I help you set up and show you the how and kind of be your guide to managing your finances. So I'll have a link to that if you're interested. You're welcome to share that. I also wanted to let you know, because of my recent experience of being let go, but also to the same experience, to let you know that, hey, I wanted to offer a 25% discount for anybody who's interested that is part of the HireHigherEd. I know that Eric is doing a raffle that you're welcome to participate in as well. So if you don't win the raffle, there is other opportunities where you can schedule a one-on-one. So I put a coupon code to get 25% off if you use that, to continue the conversation to help your finances. So again, if you're interested in that, you're welcome to check it out. But again, I've got a lot of free content that you can check out on my YouTube channel, and hopefully you can check out. So I got through a lot of information today, and I'm sure there are going to be a lot of different questions that people have. So we have about 15 minutes before there's the next conference or next little streaming that you can get to go to from HireHigherEd. So I wanted to leave this open to people who may be interested in asking a particular question that you have. So I'm going to open it up. Please feel free to ask any questions that you may have about the saving secret, about how I budget, or any different things about moving your money into savings. I mean, that's a pretty dramatic statement. So let's see what other questions we have that people may have. All righty here. So one that I would talk about is, here we go. Yeah, there's Samantha wrote a great, she wasn't a question, but she wrote a great statement that said that, a lot of people are putting their money under their pillow, or they're wanting it because they want that feel good way of putting money and having it safe and secure. But I think one of the things that COVID has taught us is that, having cash may not even be that secure, because yes, there's more and more you're going to need access to digital payment forms, because there's change that you have to have exact change. So if you have cash, people aren't able to give you the difference. You might be overpaying if you have cash. So putting that money just in cash can be extremely, extremely dangerous. So this is from Ben. It says, there are certainly some, here we go, let me put this up here. I don't know if you can see this. There's certainly some advantages and disadvantages to being single or not. Less income and tax perks for singles, higher expenses when you're married, especially if your spouse is a spender. So I think, budgeting process is different for sure if you are married or single. But I think it's very important, if you are in a relationship, that you don't have the mindset that only one person handles the money. Now, there may be one person who has all the, there may be one person who has all of the bills that they physically pay or whatever, but you still want to make sure that your partner knows what is going on in your finances. Because when somebody wants to be aware of what you make and what things cost, because that way there's not going to be an argument to say, here's what we have. These are what the bills that we need. If we want to do this, we need to make a plan. Maybe we need to make a trim here or there. Because again, when you're talking about finances, a lot of times it can feel like a negotiation about I win, you lose. We do it, we don't do it. But again, when you come together and realize this is the available resources that we have to work with, this is what we can spend. And so again, the person who's the spender looks at somebody who's the saver and says, honey, we have all of this available to spend. Let's spend some of this. Or in another situation, to say, the saver talking to the spender to say, honey, we just, unfortunately, we don't have enough money to cover all of these different things. We need to make a change. And that's an important conversation to have. So here we go. Jordan wrote, when can we see it? What are you referring to, it? We can see it. Oh, you're just saying you can see the thing. I thought you were talking about other things. Sorry about that, Jordan. Again, feel free to put your questions in there. I want to go back to this slide that I know that some people may have questions about, specifically about setting up your savings as a default, because I think it's pretty important to recognize that it can be very convoluted. Here we go. We got a question from Mr. Kunzler here. He said, "Hi, Jamie. Great job on the presentation. Just wondering what your thoughts are on a good investment during a recession. The dollar's losing its value, concerned about keeping savings in cash." That's a really great question. And I think it depends, first of all, great question to Matt. I think it really depends on your situation. So if you are, and let's go to this slide, right? So let me go to this slide. So if you're in a situation where you have debt, the best, and you have an emergency fund, right? Let's say you have a job and you feel like you have enough to cover your expenses, you have an emergency fund. The best thing you can be doing is paying off debt. That's the first thing that you're going to want to work towards. But let's say you do have an emergency fund and you are debt free, right? I think you may not ask yourself of like keeping your money in savings, but I would say specifically for myself, for somebody who's recently lost their job, who's lost their income coming in, I would say for me, as soon as I lost my job, I stopped contributing to my retirement account. I stopped contributing to any other excess that I was having, especially the goal that I was working on is paying extra on my home. So since I don't have an income, I was working on building up my savings. I would say you still want to make sure you have 3 to 6 months worth of expenses regardless, because if for whatever reason you run into a horrible situation where you do lose your job, you're going to want that money in an actual boring savings account, even if you're only getting 1% on it. Because like I said, when I lost my job, the first thought I had was, I'm so glad I have my money in my savings account, not, oh my goodness, I'm so glad I have all this money in my 401k. And the problem is there's a lot of people who run into a situation where have all of this money in their 401k and no money in their savings account because they're trying to get a better return, and there's just convoluted to get the money out. And so that's a caution that I bring to people, is having cash in a boring savings account is not a bad idea, because really your money in your savings account is used as like an insurance policy. You hope you don't have to use it, but you're glad that it's there. But great question. Here's another one. We see you off. What services do you offer in your one-on-one coaching? So again, my one-on-one coaching really is right here in investing for the future. So typically when I talk with my clients, I charge I really just want to have one initial setup that I talk through kind of what I walked each of you through, is how to set up the right bank. Because I believe having the right foundational on your bank is setting yourself up to make sure that you have savings account. Now, obviously, if a client comes to me that already has a significant amount of savings and they're moving on to the next step, then obviously I would work with them to, eliminate debt if they wanted to focus on that. If they had no debt, and then they were focusing on maybe buying a home, how do they navigate, putting 20% down to avoid PMI? I mean, there's a lot of different challenges that people have with that, how to save it, right? And then it really comes into navigating which retirement accounts do you use. So like clients, some people don't realize my favorite retirement account is actually the health savings account. That's it's a great account if you have access to it. Not everybody has access to it because it has to be bundled with a high deductible medical insurance plan. But then you have IRAs. It's really about investing. But something I would say just as important is what I don't coach on. I'm not going to tell you exactly what to invest in. That's not my expertise. There's financial planners that do that are going to say this particular stock. I have principles that I share. I do believe in mutual funds. I do like index funds, and I do like ETFs. Not a big single stock guy. There's a lot of people who are, but that would not be the person I would coach. So I think it's important to recognize not just who do I coach, but who do I not coach. So if you're looking for something like that, that's probably not the person. But if you want to organize your money, build savings, eliminate debt, or figure out how to work towards financial independence, I would be happy to schedule a chat with you. Here we go. Yeah, this question is how do interest rates affect your savings account recommendation? Well, that's a great question. And like I said, I have an appreciation and a perspective that might be different from somebody who there are two schools of thought. There's the person who talks about wearing a life vest as a flight attendant, and there's the person who crash landed and is actually wearing their life vest in the water. And so I think I bring that perspective up is my point is it doesn't matter if the savings account rate gets to zero. I am still going to put my money in a savings account because the purpose of that is not look how great I'm making 1% of my money on my savings account. What I teach people is it's that insurance policy. When I lost my job, I did not care what percentage I was getting on my savings rate. I cared that I had money in my savings account. The problem, if we look back over here to this other great graph that I showed, the reason why people don't have money in their savings account is because they think they're winning by putting in an investment account. But then when they put it in an investment account, there's fees associated with taking it out. Having money in a savings account is not a loser strategy. There's so many people, and I hate reading these articles that say if you have more than $1,000 in your savings account, you're losing or you're dumb. That's garbage. That is just so far from the truth because that person they have a steady income. Ask the person who doesn't have a job and doesn't have money coming in, and they're going to say they would much rather have their money in a savings account than sitting in a 401k that maybe is a 10%, hit, or they have to navigate creating a loan or all of this other convoluted mess. A lot of people want to jump to the more sexy or the more fun thing. Building up savings is boring. I recognize that. I'm a boring guy, but I try to make savings sexy. And so if you want to build up your savings, that's my message to people. It's a unique niche that I think the world needs because most people do not have two nickels to rub together. I mean, the data would show that more than 60% of people don't have $1,000 saved. What they're doing isn't working. So I really appreciate all of the great questions. We got time for one more question before we wrap it up and let you go to the next conference. So who's the brave soul who's got one more question? If we don't have one, I have something I want to wrap it up with. So, all right. I guess the last thing I would just say is I would end with Mr. Robert Kiyosaki is the same thing that I said earlier, is if you want to be financially free, you need to become a different person than you are today. And maybe many of you people that are streaming and watching this right now, you're doing all of the things that I've talked about. You have an emergency fund. You don't have debt. But like I said, 70% of your friends don't have $1,000 saved. This message is not just for you, but it's for you to share, to say, hey, people get uncomfortable talking about personal finances because they feel like it's a personal attack on their intelligence or on something else. And that is not the intent, because if you just put your head in the sand, you're going to be worse off than if you took action. So again, I hope this information was helpful. Please, again, feel free to like, subscribe. Please share this video with other people who might need this information, who might gone through a recent job loss or might have experienced this, because I'd love to talk with you. I'd love to set up and no matter what your situation is, maybe you don't have any money in savings, but that's no reason not to ask for help. So you can find me on my social media platforms, but you can also send me an email. I would love to connect. Thank you so much. Oh, we've got one more thing. It says, making regular income. What is a realistic savings rate you should aim for? So I think a savings rate that you should aim for, and I make sure I answer this question, Lynn, is you want to make sure that you have at least 3 to 6 months of worth of expenses that you're saving. Again, you want to put 20. I think it's good to save. If you have debt, you're putting 20% of your money towards some kind of income activity. So another way of wording it is, if you have your income, you want to put probably 80% of your money towards expenses. But if the more money that you can put towards savings or investing activities, the better. A video that I did a couple months back that you're welcome to check out is I talk a lot more about savings rate. And I think this is what Lynn is talking about, is that you want to put money towards what percentage of your money is going towards expenses. And I think that's a great question to ask yourself. And if you only have 50% of your money going towards expenses, and you have 50% of your money going towards things that are not related to your expenses, whether they be retirement accounts, savings accounts, whether they be other investing activities, that's important. That's something that I would say that you should shoot for. But the challenge is, a lot of times your expenses make your savings rate, or make your expenses so high that they make your savings rate, or what you're available to spend on non-expenses, so high. But again, it's been a great pleasure to be with you today. Again, I hope we can connect. Look forward to some of the other great services that are provided from HireHigherEd. I look forward to connecting with you. Thanks so much, and take care.